All right, we are here with Sally. It is Cluchey, correct?
Cluchey.
Cluchey, there we go. Sorry, Sally Cluchey, state representative candidate. Sally, sorry about the mispronunciation, but I'm glad we covered it. I've got 5 questions to go through. I just like to ask the same 5 questions to all the candidates to kind of keep it fair, but we'll go off on a bunch of tangents too, I'm sure. First question though is, what district are you running for, and where does that cover?
Yeah, so this is actually a new district this year. So it's District 52. And because of redistricting, I now have all of Bowdoinham, all of Richmond, and the northern half of Bowdoin. So that's from Route 125 and north.
Okay.
So if you're 125 or if you're south of 125, you got a whole different slate of, well, you're going to get a different ballot actually.
Yep. Oh, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. Your name just won't even be there.
That's right.
Well, that's good. Okay, yeah, because that was, yeah, okay. I remember that district from last time, and it was all kind of fragmented. Swans Island?
Yes, but you know what? Interesting enough, there's not actually anyone who lives there year round. Oh. I was thinking it would be fun to take a boat out to do some canvassing,
right?
But no one lives there.
It would be a very lonely canvassing. Yes. Just like, hello, anybody? So question number 2, tell us a little bit about your background and why you're running for office.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So my parents raised me from a very young age to believe in public service. My dad was a volunteer fireman in EMT, and he also was a science teacher at my public school. I had him 3 different times for 3 different courses. And when I was in 2nd grade, my mother was elected to be the first female supervisor in our town.
Wow.
And so, you know, what they taught my siblings is like, when you find your community, you serve it. And so that's sort of what I've been, you know, doing ever since. When I graduated from college, I went to work for the military, developing a malaria vaccine. I was there for about 5 years and then transitioned into health science policy for about 6 years. From there, I actually had an opportunity to go and join a venture-backed health technology startup, which was really fun because I had never worked in, a for-profit company ever before. And so I initially started as sort of in the pharmaceutical client arm of the company, and I was working with clients. And after about a year, we realized that arm of the business wasn't going where we wanted it to go. And so I totally pivoted and changed roles into like business operations, which was something I'd never had any exposure to before. But I very quickly saw that it was a really natural fit for what I'm good at and what I enjoy. I'm very much a people person and a process person. Yeah. So when I started, I was employee number 10. And over the time that I was there, we built it up to 70 employees. So I did every little bit of HR process. I did a lot of financial operations processes. Over the course of the time that I was there, we were actually acquired twice. And so I had to go through the process of setting up new financial operations systems every time. And it was a really fun and dynamic experience. And from that, I actually left and started my own consulting company that is based on a tool that helps organizations understand how to solve problems by listening to the voices of their employees. And it's really fun. It's incredibly empowering. I'm super proud of the tool. It's really effective. And, also living in Bowdoinham, I've gotten incredibly invested in the community. So I'm the chair of the Bowdoinham Food Pantry, which I'm so proud of how we navigated the pandemic. We never once shut down.
Wow.
And, when the pandemic hit, most of our volunteers were in their 70s and 80s. And so all of a sudden we had to say, nope, none of you can volunteer anymore. We're too worried about your safety. So we had to recruit all these young people to come in and help. And we really rose to the occasion. And now we're bigger and better than ever. We feed so many people every single week. And, as I'll talk about a little bit later, the role of the food pantry in our community in particular has been incredibly important, especially these days. But I also have 2 children in the Bowdoinham Community School. And so when my oldest started at the community school, I got roped into running the 5K chicken run, which I realized could quickly become our biggest volunteer or fundraising event of the year. And so I changed the way that the school did fundraising. And it went from, I think the year before I started participating, we made like $200 profit on the race. It was just really community building. And now we're raising like $12,000 a year when we do it.
That's a great number.
And it's also like community building. So and the whole goal of doing the fundraising this way is to take the pressure off of families for having to do small dollar fundraisers. And so that when they do choose to engage in the school, they can do so in really meaningful ways and, like community building events. So, so the reason why I'm running is because I'm already serving my community. I love the community of Bowdoinham. And there was an opportunity this summer because the existing candidate dropped out of the race. And, I'd been anxious about the state of the world. And so when an opening, came up, I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need to be doing with my time. I need to run for office and I need to be there to be a voice of reason and to really support my community. And so I had no idea how much I wanted this job until I started campaigning.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would run for office, but boy, does this feel like the right thing for me to be doing.
Okay, so there's only like 17 different paths I want to go down from there, and we don't have time for that. Let's just set aside the consulting practice tool that talks to your employees to find out what change you want to make, because that's brilliant. And we're going to have a very separate chamber conversation offline about that, but talk about it more if you wanted your answers, but that sounds incredible. But yeah, let's keep going with these other questions. But what a fascinating background. What a cool story. Okay. What are the top 3 issues affecting Mainers right now that you look forward to working on if elected?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things I realized, just like when I'm working in, in a new company, is I can't help the organization if I don't know what's going on. I can't help our community if I don't know what's going on. So when I got into the campaign, I set a goal that I was going to knock on 2,000 doors and talk to as many people as I possibly could. And I have done that.
Wow.
And I'm going to continue to talk to people. But at every door, you have a different conversation. And I view this very much as a data gathering process. What are the issues that are most affecting people? And you're asking for the top 3. So here's what I've got. So first and foremost is the economy is worrying so many people. Costs are up on everything. Wages have not kept pace. We're seeing more people visiting the food pantries all across the state, but certainly in Bowdoinham, we have new families joining every month. In August, we had 17 new families join.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and also we had a lot of Mainers leave the workforce during the course of the pandemic, some of them for retirement, others had to drop out of the workforce to take care of aging parents. And so we have a major workforce shortage as well. So the economy and costs are just an absolute big one. And I will talk about solutions in a minute, but I want to keep going on some of the other things that I'm hearing. So the economy is one. Number 2 is housing, right? So many people want to live here, and yet it is very hard to find a place to live that's affordable some of the property. One of the things I've been seeing when I go through these communities is that, especially in downtown Richmond, there are a lot of rental properties available, but a lot of them are in incredible disrepair. Yeah. So even if you can find a place to live, it doesn't afford you much sort of dignity or hope in life. And so we really need to figure out how to create more housing and more affordable housing and more housing that's appropriate for the stage of life that you're in. Yep. Okay, so then the third thing that I've heard, and this is probably the number one thing, which is why I'm sort of bringing it last, is that because it's the big one, is that people want to be able to age at home, and there's not a lot of resources available for people to do that safely right now. Yeah. As I said, we're everybody knows that, we're the oldest state, in terms of age, and we just don't have enough home health workers to make it so that people can age at home safely. I experienced this with my mother when she got very ill about a year ago. She got qualified for about 60 hours of care every week. We couldn't find people to provide that much care. There's just not enough people working in the field. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. One of which is it doesn't pay very well.
Yep.
You know, the state and federal government do not, I think Medicare doesn't even pay for home health workers most of the time. Medicaid will, but that's at a very low rates. They're not paid for transportation, and they don't have any benefits, and, you know, or paid time off. And so it's not a field that people want to go into, but it's a field we desperately need people to go into.
I love it. It's one of my favorite phrases. I picked this up 4 or 5 years ago. I was reading a book, Dan Rather book, and he had the phrase that said, familiarity is a necessary ingredient for acceptance. And I just think that speaks so much to whatever experience we've had is what we know. And that food bank experience that you have, you've seen things from that side by going to talk to people and hear their stories. You've seen their side. You've been personally affected by senior care and the issues there. And so, you know, it's those are the things that you're familiar with and that you're passionate about. That totally makes sense. One of the real issues we're going to have to solve here in the next 5 or 10 years is, I'm fine with everyone getting more wages. Like I think it absolutely has to happen. I think most business people will agree, but it does also increase. That is also part of our inflation. Like when I'm talking to builders about, hey, why aren't we building new places? And they're like, one of the costs that's been increased since the pandemic is the labor. And that's not going to go back down. Like if the price of a 2x4 might go back down, but the price of, so there's always going to be some sort of inflation, which is fine. We just have to get used to the fact that what happened with the pandemic wasn't a pendulum. And we're not going to be swinging back. It was a shift. And there's a new world now. There's something that we're going to have to look at for, again, how do we make the building cost low enough so that the rents can be low enough that, you know, that it's affordable. I mean, there's all sorts of things. And some of it's going to be, you know, I see it in childcare. Childcare is the great example I like to give is, you want to pay the childcare workers more, but you can't charge the parents anymore. Right. That's the income stream. So how do you give them more without getting more here? And the answer is, you know, like Speaker Fecto's bill that he put through that said, you know, we're going to have some money set aside for accreditation for those workers. So if they hit certain benchmarks, that separate fund will pay them. That's great. That's a solution. Like, is there something we can do with housing or something that, you know, maybe it's a less permitting or something, I don't know, that costs the builders less. But yeah, trying to find those solutions is, I think, key to this next legislature. And so
I agree. Yeah. Well, and that's the role of government, right? When the private sector can't fix the problem because of that's when government comes in. Their job is to do the thing that's not going to work in, you know, the capitalist society in which we live, right? I mean, that's they're supposed to fill in that gap. And so I agree. I mean, I think we have a lot of work cut out for us. That's not going to be easy. That's going to require a lot of ingenuity and but also a lot of thoughtfulness, you know. Yeah. So, you know, one of the things when we talk about, you know, housing solutions, like we need to, at a state level, hopefully we can incentivize towns and municipalities to encourage more development, but we also we want to do it mindfully so that development is happening where development is appropriate and where there already is development, right? So building up potentially, right? Converting old commercial spaces that are no longer be used for businesses into housing, not just sprawling out into, you know, disrupting additional wildlife habitat, right? So
but selecting those growth zones that exactly you want to see it, but also everyone's got to accept the growth zones. I mean, one of the things I see is, you know, like a homeless shelter as an example. Everyone's like, yes, we need a homeless shelter. Oh no, I don't want it in my neighborhood, but we need one. And it's like, well, guys, it's got to be in somebody's neighborhood. So, I mean, so how do we, and it's like, yeah, that comes from zoning and designating these specific things, places where these things can happen. And your town councils are good for that, but also at the state level, it's so important. So anyway, sorry.
Well,
Gosh,
just
no,
like
go.
one additional thing. I mean, so housing is a solution, is something that will be solved at a local level, which means that people in towns and cities need to get involved. They need to go to their select board meetings. They need to go to their planning board meetings, and they need to be participating in the process. It's not something that can be solved necessarily at a state or federal level. So that is really an opportunity where citizens need to step up and get involved.
I so agree. So one of the things that I wrote in an article 2 weeks ago was something to the effect of, it's going to get harder workforce rise and business leaders are going to get stretched. And it is the tendency that when things get hard to put up your walls and just worry about yourself, when actually what we need to be doing is reaching out across the community, because we're all dealing with these same issues and we can all solve them together. So it's actually not putting up the walls, it's actually reaching out. Question number 4. And then we can go back at the end and cover anything else. If voters could only know 2 things about you before they fill out their ballot, what would those 2 things be?
Oh, yeah. Well, first and foremost, like, I'm running to serve my community.
Yeah.
I'm not in this race for myself. And I am not the expert in all things, but I'm willing to go to Augusta and be the voice and the advocate for my community. And so what I'm really going to be looking for is for people to communicate with me as to what's important to them. When bills are up for discussion, I will be doing all that I can to communicate that information out to my district and really be trying hard to get them to give me feedback on, how do you feel about this? Which way should I be voting? You know, what should I need? What should I know? What sector of the, stakeholders is going to be adversely affected by this that maybe hasn't been considered? Please let me know, because our community members are the experts in these things. Yeah. And I need to hear from them. So that's one thing I want them to know about me before voting. The other is that I am very focused on solutions. I am not somebody who spends a lot of time whining about, like, how did we get here and whose fault is it and who's to blame? We are where we are. There's nothing that can be done to change it. So if we want to get ourselves out of this, we need to focus our time and energy on figuring out what is the goal and how do we get there. And that's what I will be working on. And that's how I will present myself. And that's my approach and my outlook if I get elected.
One of the reasons I started the workforce program that I did is because I was tired of going into meetings and people being like, boy, we got a workforce shortage. That's got to get solved. Well, got to get going, got to get to my next meeting. And I'm like, why don't we solve it? Like, what if we were the ones we were waiting for? And so that's kind of why I launched that whole thing. Before we get into the last question, anything we didn't cover that you want?
Yeah. So there's 2 more solutions I wanted to talk about that sort of that sort of go align with, I heard issues about the economy. I heard issues about housing and aging at home, right? So in terms of the economy, one of the things I would really like to do is to decrease the income tax rate on a lot of Mainers. Once you're making just shy of $55,000 a year, you're getting taxed at the same rate as somebody who's making $500,000 a year. And that just doesn't seem super fair. It seems like we could have a lot of additional tax bracket, sort of incremental brackets before you get up to a really high level where people are taxed at that highest rate. So obviously that's going to involve conversations and understanding with the state economists to understand what is the impact and how much money do you actually lose when you reduce the tax rate on this group of people, and how do we then figure out a way to make up that revenue? Is it with some sort of luxury tax? I don't know, right? But I think there are solutions out there. Other states have different systems, and I'm confident that we can come up with something. So that's one thing I really want to focus on. The other thing that I would like to do is work very hard to increase the number of home health workers in the state. And I think there are a number of different ways that we can do that. One is increasing their hourly pay. Two is increasing them for mileage, getting them some sort of benefits. Maybe we can incentivize them with educational training. There are a lot of different things we can do, but that will be my number one focus if I get elected, is to try and increase the number of home health workers in the state.
Well, so, one of the things that about the workforce piece is everyone's like, how do we get here? What is it? And it's like, it's demographics. The answer is demographics. The baby boomers had kids. They turned working age in the late 70s, early 80s. They worked 40 years and now they're retiring, and we didn't backfill their jobs. But also those baby boomers are all going to be dealing with this senior care question, and we haven't quite grappled with it yet. I mean, that's why, LD 2003 and the accessory dwelling units is an interesting idea to get, a mother-in-law apartment built on your single family lot, and some ideas like that. But there needs to be such a focus here, because let's be honest, not every senior is going to be able to afford to go to a senior living facility. There's
absolutely not. Most of them will not
going to be enough beds in some of these senior living facilities with the number of people. So it's either we're going to have multi-generational homes like they do in Hawaii and other places. My wife is from Hawaii, and where you have 3 or 4 generations living under one roof again, or we need to find some other solutions, for this, because we can't leave our seniors out in the cold.
Right. And I'm increasingly seeing that. I mean, I was at a multi-generational home yesterday in Richmond, and actually the woman talked to me and she said, actually, that house on the left and that house on the right, also multi-generational homes right now. And we've all been here for ages, but our kids moved out.
Yep.
And they moved back in with their grandkids because they can't afford to live here. And so I don't know if this housing shortage is going to secretly be, the answer to helping, provide care for aging Mainers. It might be an unintentional consequence that's a benefit potentially, but either way, we still need to increase the number of home health workers, because we can't have those younger employees dropping out of the workforce to take care of their family members.
People don't realize the number of employees during the pandemic that didn't work for either childcare or senior care reasons. It wasn't anything more than that. They just said, I'm sorry, I can't go to work. My family's health is more important. Like, that's not a lazy person. That's someone who's caring about their, and some of the rhetoric that was being used to describe those people that chose not to work. It's like, not that they chose not to work, it's that they chose to help their family. And we gotta change that perspective. So
we do. And part of the way that we do that is just, talking to people when, as a human, right. And just helping, try and connect. What are the things that we have in common? What are our goals? And one of the things I have found when I've been out talking to so many people is that when I can actually get in and have the discussion with them, most of us want the exact same things. And so it's just a matter of, let's get these barriers, these walls that everybody put up, all of the national rhetoric, just let's push it aside. Let's just connect as neighbors. And lo and behold, we want the same things. We've got the same values. And so we just need to start from there and rebuild.
I love it. Sally, last question. The best way for people to connect with you or find out more about you as a candidate?
Yeah. So sallycluchey.com is the absolute best way, because you can get my Facebook page there. You can get my phone number. Also, I'm around. I have an office right on Main Street in Bowdoinham. I try to be here most mornings during the campaign. But sallycluchey.com will get you to me in any number of ways. And I would encourage people to reach out, because this is why I'm running. I'm running to support our community, and I need to hear from people.
Sally, I love it so much. So wonderful to meet you. Sally Cluchey, if you need to know how to spell it, the sign behind Sally says it. You'll also see it in the description of this video. So Sally, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cory.